I will now demonstrate the steps to use Salesforce Outbound Messaging to trigger a data synchronization task.
Okay, so now I'm going to set up a new data synchronization task that uses Salesforce Outbound Messaging. So I'm going to set the operation to insert, and my source will be my Salesforce account object. And again, you can only use outbound messaging with one source object. And my target will be a SQL Server table called Outbound Account. Okay, that's probably good. And then where you would enable outbound messaging for Salesforce would be under the schedule step. Under schedule details, you would select the run this task in real time upon receiving an outbound message from Salesforce option. And once you click that, an endpoint URL will be generated. And so I'll go ahead and copy that. You can modify the timeout options there. But I'm going to go ahead and save and close this task. Now I'm going to go over to Salesforce. To create workflow and approvals. And I'm going to create a new outbound message for the account object. And I'll paste the new endpoint URL into the outbound message. And I'll specify my user to send as. Now it's automatically selected for me, but you want to select the user that is set up in your connection in Informatica Cloud. And then you can select the account fields to send across in that email. And you can actually send all of the fields, that won't hurt. But at a minimum, you want to send the fields that you've used in your mapping in the task. All right. So I'm going to go back to my list of outbound messages, and now the next step, I'm going to go again under workflow and approvals, and I'm going to create a workflow rule to invoke that outbound message. So I'm going to create a new rule, specify the object, account, and I want to set my evaluation criteria. Now, the scenario for this demo is that I want to send or trigger an outbound message to load an account into my SQL Server database every time a new account record is created in Salesforce. Okay, so my evaluation criteria I will set to created. And again, my task has the insert operation. If I were upserting, then I would select the created and every time it's edited option, or else created and every time it's edited to subsequently meet certain criteria. Now, my rule criteria, I'm going to change this to formula evaluates to true. And because I want it to always trigger every time a new account record is created in Salesforce, I'm going to set my rule criteria to 1 equals 1 because that will always evaluate to true. Okay, so I will go save and next. And now I'm going to add a workflow action. I'm going to add an existing action. So I could create a new outbound message here, but I've already created one, so I'll select an existing. I'll save that, and then finally I'll click Done. Now the last thing, in order for this workflow rule to work, is it does need to be activated. So be sure to activate your workflow rule in order to test it. All right, so I'll go ahead and test it now by going over to my Accounts tab, and I'll create a couple of new accounts. And I'm going to go back over to Informatica Cloud real quick and go to the Activity Monitor. And here I can already see that the task has been triggered. And if I select the alternate view there, I can see that it has a row count of 3. So it's taking in all of the 3 new accounts I just created in Salesforce. And so Informatica Cloud will actually let the task hang out a few minutes longer than it needs to in the activity monitor when receiving outbound messages, so that it can take in all outbound messages at one time rather than firing up a new job each time it receives a new message. All right, so if I go over to my website to display my SQL Server table called Outbound Accounts, I can see that those new accounts were added.